All right, welcome everybody. Thank you guys for joining up. Um, I guess to start off with the stand-up, I want to give some few updates for myself. So some updates, um, the congressmen, they reached out. They are interested in some software. I'm trying to schedule a meeting with them. Oh, nice, there's Gigo. But yeah, trying to schedule a meeting with the Congressman Moylan, James Moylan, I think. Because they're interested in some software, which is pretty cool, pretty exciting. And then also been working on another project for Cornerstone, which is a tax business. It's actually my mom's tax business, and so I've been working on some stuff for there, and it's been pretty cool. I've been messing with. I've never tried this before, but when I was doing some research, apparently you can. But so I'm gonna have a React front end, and then it's gonna be a Rails. There's gonna be two backends. There's gonna be a Rails backend and a Fast API backend, all connected to the same database and the same front end, which is gonna be interesting. Um, yeah, I don't know. I haven't done it yet. I created the Rails backend and the React front end, but I want to create the Fast API backend soon, and I want to try it. I don't know. I'm gonna mess around with it. I want to see how it works. It's a nice little trial thing that I'm gonna do. But the reason why is because I like Rails, especially for I'm gonna use it. I'm gonna create something to like track their time, track their clients and stuff like that for tax season coming up. But then I created this. I was doing a proof of concept and I created this like invoice maker. So I make a lot of invoices. And so I was like, what if I created some like AI thing that can create a bunch of invoices for me really easily? And so I did it. And then when I was showing Cami and my mom and stuff like that over there, they're like, what if you do Cami was the ones like, what if you do like one for transmittals? I guess they make a lot of those. And so I was like, okay, cool. Maybe I could do that. And so we'll have the regular CRUD application that we're used to, and then we're gonna have the kind of this AI chatbot thing that kind of creates transmittals for you, and then they'll kind of work together in somehow. And I'm not sure the full implementation yet, but yeah, it's pretty cool. And actually, here, I'll show you guys a little bit of what I was doing. So let me pull this up. Mm-mm. So invoice maker. So I deployed it. And so the idea with this invoice maker, it was really just a proof of concept. And it's because, so when I make a lot of invoices, it's like, I don't want to have to create it with Excel manually. I don't want to have to go to like sometimes I maybe try even going like Chat GPT and having it do it. And it does it sometimes, but it's not consistent. And so I was like, there has to be a service that I can create to kind of automate this process. And so that's exactly like, I was just kind of proof of concept, but it's exactly what I kind of did. So like, for example, let's say I have a new contact or not new contract with a business called Intuit. I don't know, I'm gonna make Intuit TurboTax, whatever, just the first one that came to my mind. Please create me an invoice to bill them for software services for the dates of January 1st through January 20th, 2026. The total should be $10,000, whatever. So now I click enter. It's using so it has templates that it could choose from, and then there's a model, right? There's an AI model that then gets the information from what I sent and chooses the template to use and fills it out accordingly. So it's not fully like the model is making the template necessarily. That's maybe in the future what I would want to do, but for more, I like so it's gonna create a client and it's gonna send the same thing again, and then we'll see the invoice that it creates for us. All right, cool. So here's a little preview. Invoice, blah blah blah. 2026-01. That's the dates, $10,000 software services. Cool. Now I click generate PDF. It generated it. I can preview it. Bam, there's the invoice. Super cool, right? And so um I create a lot of invoices and like I didn't want to have to create this every single time. And some of them I get like a little bit more complex. So for example, I was messing this one for Spectrio. And so let's say for example, for this one's more complex because like I need to track like dates and hours and stuff, for example. And so again, instead of So literally for this one, what I did was I made it so we can just upload, okay, like let's say these are the hours, right? And then I was like, here's the email template that I want to use that, generate a preview. And I was messing around like, okay, change it, blah, blah, I was messing around with it. And then from there, not only does it give you the actual invoice, but it also gives you the email to send with it if I was to tell it to, which is pretty cool. It's obviously very specific to to kind of what I do, but I just think this is kind of cool where, we can just kind of create this one-off software to kind of automate something it is that you do. And so, sorry, long story short, the idea of this invoice maker, that's kind of the transmittal, like they want me to do something similar for transmittals, which is just this document for them, to kind of automate that process since they create a lot. And that was kind of the idea there. But yeah, so I guess there'll be a fast API backend for the transmittal, a Rails API for the regular CRUD, and then a React front end, and then all connected to the same database, which I don't know. As I'm building it out, I will update you guys, but I haven't got there yet. But it's gonna be pretty cool, I think. Yeah, so that is what I've been working on together with. I tried to simplify or at least like remove like the not needed stuff from the readmes. And so if you haven't already, feel free to pull down the most recent one. I made some changes just to try to simplify it, and only keep like what's necessary. Um, but yeah, and we'll go through that after this. But I just wanted to kind of, sorry, little bit of a long-winded update, but I just wanted to share some of what I've been messing with. Yeah. Lana, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'm just kind of going order on my screen. So I'm gonna pass it to Lana. If you have any updates, if not, feel free to pass it to Ron or Kiko.
Yeah, I think what you're working on is so dope though for a start. That is so crazy. And I'm so interested to see like how they all connect to each other. Well, I just imagine it would be like, how you would make like an access request from React, the front end to that back end. You would just have different requests to like different backends, right? Like is that how that work? But
Yeah,
then
yeah.
would your Ruby and your Fast API, yeah, like the Python, would they connect to each other in a way? Like is there something that you would do that would make it like connect to each other? Or would they only connect like to React?
No, I don't see them talking to each other necessarily. What I do see with regards to them kind of talking to each other is through the database. So like the Rails application is going to update the database based on what information for,
Mm,
let's say, a client, right? And then also the Fast API backend is going to use that client information to then it's just going to make a query to the database to grab the data so that we can create the transmittal accordingly based on whatever clients or whatever tax information it needs. And so they don't necessarily need to know about each other. All they need to know is that, hey, this one is putting the information there. This one's doing a completely different service with that same information that this one put into there, if that makes sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy. I was like, dang, that I never thought about that to have like the two. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, I didn't either. Here, so I created, here's the application itself. And so here's kind of the architecture that when I was kind of like going through it with like AI, I guess to kind of plan it out, this is the architecture roughly. So it's going to be a React front end. And then as I was mentioning, here's the Rails backend and Fast API backend, and then the Postgres database. So
Mm.
this is roughly going to be the architecture of what it would look like.
Wow, that is so cool.
Yeah, it's really interesting, right? Because usually we're just kind of one side. Usually we're this, or this, and this. Now it's going to be this, and this, and this, and this. Which,
Like
so where
working.
this to me, you said, I'm sorry, Lana?
No, sorry, just like
No,
all
you're good.
working together.
Yeah, and so where like kind of where this is taking me is so a big thing that larger software companies do a lot of times, and there's pros and cons to it, but a big thing that larger software companies do is they do this thing called a microservice. They do microservices, we'll say microservices. And so the idea of a microservice is right now we're accustomed to building something called a monolith. So the idea of a monolith is it's like one huge application that has all of the logic, everything is there. It's not going anywhere else. Like everything is there. Versus with microservices, you have a lot of tiny applications. Like this application does this, this API, let's say, does this other API does this other thing, this other API does this thing, and they kind of all work together to build ultimately this one large application. But in reality, under the hood, there are a lot of little applications, a lot of little APIs, for example, in that scenario. And there's pros and cons to it. On bigger teams, microservices are a lot, maybe could be a lot better because each team could be working on its own little part of the application. Versus on smaller teams, monoliths might be better in the sense because there's not a lot of different engineers. Like there's only, let's say, a few engineers and we're all working on the same code base. Pros and cons to it. Another kind of pro to using a microservice is every service, every microservice could be in a different language and framework, right? So even like in this example, right? So we have the Rails API, obviously using Ruby on Rails, Fast API for the AI stuff using Fast API. If we wanted, there could be other services using Bootstrap, I mean, not Bootstrap, Spring Boot in Java, right? There could be C Sharp, right? Whatever, I don't know, whatever. And there could be any number of different things for the different engineers that are specializing for those specific things, which is kind of cool. But yeah, so that's kind of the idea. And that's what I feel like this is kind of turning into somewhat. It's not fully because there's only two of them, maybe, and it's a lot simpler. But definitely bigger companies that a lot of times for like these big services, like I bet you like Netflix, Facebook, all those things, right? I'm almost sure of it. I can't speak to it for sure, but I'm almost sure of it that they use this idea of microservices where there's a lot of different little services. And it's actually really interesting. And it's really, I think it's really cool. Sorry.
No, no, that's crazy. And now that I think about it, it's like, okay, you know how like different languages are kind of like they have their things that it's like
Mhm.
better use that language. Like Python with AI, you know, like how it's just like built for that, or like it just is like better to do use that language. That kind of like it's kind of like clicking in my head where it's like, okay, you have specific tasks, and then these languages would be the preferable language to
Mhm.
use for that, or whatever you're doing.
100%.
They're all connected. That makes sense.
That's
Yeah,
exactly
and
my reasoning behind this. Because I know
yeah,
that Rails is way better at like the default CRUD. It's way easier for me versus AI stuff. Fast API is way better than Rails. I could probably do it in Rails, but it's going to be a lot more like not going to be as straightforward, right? It's
mhm.
exactly what you're saying. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's really cool. And I think it's really interesting. And depending on how fast or slow I can get through with this. So I'm working on it in phases. And so I have this document. This is the build plan. And so this is what I'm working through right now. I'm on phase 6. I'm getting into phase 7 where this is going to be like S3 upload. There's some stuff here that I need to figure out with S3 upload because whatever, we can get into that later, but I just need to figure out how to do it privately. I've been doing it publicly before. And what that means is like, how do I make it so no one except for this application can see these S3 images? Um, have I told you guys what S3 is for and stuff like that? Have I shared that with before? I don't remember. So the idea with S3, so S3 is a service from Amazon. So if you have you guys heard of AWS,
Mhm.
Amazon Web Services? So the idea of AWS is it's like a cloud provider. We can think of it like Render, but way better, like way more, like you can do so much more with it. And so everything that you can do with Render, you can do with AWS and more. And so one of the services that AWS has is this service called S3. I don't know if it stands for something, but what basically S3 is, it's a place where you can like upload documents, pictures, videos, all those types of things that you wouldn't store in a normal database. You can store it there. And so, for example, when we do images, right? I've never had it where you guys upload an image, you guys create an application, you upload an image to your application, because that's not really the way that it's usually handled. You don't upload an image to a database like we would upload a string to a database. It's different. And so usually and I want to research more of why, because the why is a little bit hazy for me. But the proper way, the usual proper way to handle it is what happens is when someone, for example, any of the applications that I've built, the way that it works is when a user uploads an image, it goes to S3. We're uploading it to AWS S3. And so within AWS, so AWS S3 is what hosts the images, we'll say, hosts the images and videos, any image that's posted or that is uploaded. And then from there, in the actual database, instead of us storing the actual image itself, we're storing a URL. The URL for that, the URL for the image that we just uploaded, right? And so that's the way it usually works is in my databases that I've worked with and in most places that I've worked, the actual image in the database isn't an image. It's a URL that points to where the image is hosted. And so, yeah, that's kind of the way S3 works. And so right now, what I'm used to doing with S3 is I'm used to uploading it and making it public. So it's like anybody can see that image if they had the URL. For them to find the URL, it'd be a little bit hard, but like these images aren't sensitive data. And so it doesn't matter to me if anybody could see it because most of them are public facing things anyway. Like the recipe thing, like all those images that get uploaded, they're in S3. Those it doesn't matter if they're public things because they're public things anyway. Those are public recipes, right? And so for the tax thing, I'm going to have it so we can upload documents, right? Like tax documents and stuff like that. But that cannot be public things. That's where I need to figure out how can I do a private S3 bucket? How can I make it so that way when we upload it, not anyone who has the URL can see the documents. It needs to be private. And so that's kind of the next thing that I'm going to look into and try to figure out. Sorry guys, we're kind of going into detail and kind of taking a little bit of time. Are you guys okay with a little bit of technical? Okay, okay. Yeah.
I'm
Thank
good.
all right,
Sure.
cool, cool, cool. Just making sure. But yeah, anyway, so that's the next thing that I'm kind of digging into. I'm trying to figure out is how to properly do private S3 uploads and stuff like that. And then after that, yeah, so I'm going to implement some notifications with emails and text messages and stuff like that. And then here, phase 9, this is going to be the big one, transmittal maker. This is where we're going to set up the fast API service. And so once I get here, this is where I'll update you guys. I'll show you guys how it works once I figure it out and stuff like that. But this is where I want to do this. And I'm really excited for this section actually. I'm actually really, really excited. Um yeah, and here actually to show you guys what it looks like. I just might as well. We're kind of just digging into it anyway, whatever. So yeah, this is a regular React and Rails. We can see Rails S here. Rails application. Let me pull up where's the browser. Locals. So here's the website. So it's for Cornerstone Accounting, and yeah, this is the website, basic website, blah 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 blah. So what I'm trying to do for them is I'm trying to help them automate some of their process. So like for tax refunds and stuff like tax returns, right? So they do that there, and so one of the things is right now you have to like manually go in and fill out some forms. It's like why do you have to do that? Like why can't we just automate that process? That's exactly what I started doing. Here's this client intake form that they usually have people come in and fill out manually. It's like, why don't we just automate that? So cool. This is exactly what I did. And then we go to the dashboard, we can see here's like the admin side. So we can see all the different clients. We can see what is their tax return status, right? All that kind of stuff. We can track the activity. I wanted to do like an activity log so we can track who's doing what. So like if someone changed the status of a tax return, we want to know who did it and when did they do it. To me, I think that's an important thing to understand, especially dealing with this stuff. And then the other thing, I wanted to create like a place that way they can track their time, right? Or whatever. So, because right now I think they're using like Google Sheets or something like that, but it's like, why not create something where it's a lot easier to do, track all users, whatever, et cetera, et cetera. And so eventually this will also have that transmittal maker and stuff like that. But yeah, so this is kind of the state of where the app, the application, I suppose. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Also, I guess while I'm here, I just want to show you guys AWS. Might as well just show you guys. This is what it looks like. Sorry, guys. Let me sign in. Mm, uh, user solid. Yeah, so here's AWS. This is S3 specifically, but this is AWS. It has a lot of different services, like anything that you would need with regards to like deploying software, putting software online, AWS probably has it. And so specifically, the only thing that I use it for right now is S3. I could use it for hosting stuff, but the reason I don't use AWS for hosting, like for example, for like render and stuff like that, instead of render is because AWS gets really, really complex really quickly, and I don't need that level of complex. I don't need that level of control. Like with AWS, you can control like every little thing, and I don't care to do that. I don't need that. Render abstracts a lot of that for us. That's why I love how simple it is on render. Versus with AWS, if I need like add like let's say you're working with thousands, tens of thousands, millions of users, that's where AWS will matter in my experience because then you can get really that specific with things. But yeah, so here's S3. And so we can see here's all the different, they call it buckets, but it's basically just a folder that contains all of the images for that specific project, right? So for example, recipe extractor. So for the recipe extractor, we can go here and we can see all the different thumbnails. And so here's all of the URLs. So if I was to click on this and if I go to the object URL, this is literally the URL, which is the image, right? And that's literally what it is. AWS hosts the images, and then we store this URL in our database, right? And so that's the way it works, kind of to put it simply. Yeah. Sorry. Does that make sense, guys, with everything? You guys have any questions, comments? All right, cool. All right, just wanted to share some of that with you guys. Some little stuff I've been messing with. Sorry, the final thing. Okay, sorry. The one last thing I wanted to share with you guys that I've been messing with. So I've been messing with Docker. So I haven't went through Docker with you guys, but Docker is actually so cool. It's actually way cooler than I thought. Oh gosh. So here, I want to show you this last thing. Last thing I swear, and then I'll stop talking. Okay, with Docker, right? So, so this is the invoice maker actually. This is the invoice maker. And so in the README, actually to get it started, so usually to get it started, there's a front end and there's a back end. So if we look here, here's the front end, which is a React front end. Sorry, right here. This is the front end, which is React. We can see there's the TS and TSX files. And here's the back end, which is Fast API. And so usually to get it started, right, you're going to run and you're going to ls, I'm going to cd into the back end. I'm going to cd into the front end, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to cd in the back end, run the unicorn, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to cd into the front end, run the npm run dev, blah, blah, blah. But instead, we're going to use Docker. And so Docker is going to take care of all of it for us. So now all I have to run is Docker compose up. And so when I do this one command, it starts both the front end and the back end, and it installs all of the different libraries and everything that I need. So we can think of Docker, and I'm going to butcher this explanation, but the reasoning that you would use Docker is if you have issue, like, so if you ever, maybe you guys haven't heard, actually, no, definitely heard this, where it's like, oh man, it runs on my machine, but why doesn't it run on yours? It runs on your machine, why doesn't it run on mine, right? Where people have issues running it on different machines. And so what Docker does is it allows you to run it in a kind of a virtual environment, a virtual machine. And so instead of you having to install all of that stuff on your machine, you install it in the Docker little container, in this container, which is which is a little like virtual computer. And all of the dependencies, all the libraries, all the gems, whatever, is all installed in there. So you don't have to worry about it on your machine. It alleviates that issue of it runs on mine, but not on yours because it's always the same in that environment. And so in this scenario, I was having issues with different libraries, and that's why I looked into using Docker and I was able to get it to work. And so now even to get it started, instead of me running the front end and back end separately, I run this one command and it runs both of them together. And so that uses this Docker file. It uses this one, but it also, sorry, the Docker compose YAML right here. So this is the different services. It runs the unicorn command to get started with the backend service. It runs the npm run dev command to set up the front end service. And so it does both of these at one time, so that way I don't have to worry about it. And I don't have to worry about any other weird nuances that I was running into. It's kind of cool. Just want to share with you guys Docker real quick. Um, yeah. Last thing I was gonna say, with all this stuff that I was saying, I'm gonna create a guide for Docker, and I want to do I'm gonna do a day where we can kind of go through Docker together in more detail. A little bit later on. And so actually I have it noted right here in my stuff, and this is what I was gonna do. I'm probably gonna do either after this or tomorrow. I'm going to create an alumni GitHub account and I'm going to put all of these guides that I've created for the AI engineering stuff, for Docker, whatever, all these extra things. I want to put it in there so that you guys have access to them. And with the updated stuff, because you guys have, of course, your class one, but some of them might be outdated because I didn't keep it updated. But for sure, the alumni one will always be updated. And so I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that after this. Yeah. Questions, comments on any of that? Sorry. All right, cool. Sorry, guys. That was like 30 minutes of me talking. I wanted to go through. Okay, I want to stop talking now, but all right. I'm gonna pass it over back to you, Lana. Okay, that was a lot of me talking.
So, for me, I mean, I got the message that you sent. I sent it over to my Slack, so I will work on I'm working on a chat bot for the Code School Golem website, and so I guess that's the last thing that I have to do is to um like convert those documents to markdown files and then add it to the data that I'm using to reference. I so I don't really have any blockers because I haven't started yet, but I think that's it. I don't think there's anything else to think about. And I'll pass it to Chico.
Sorry guys, loud where I'm at. Uh, I have an update. I cloned everything in. I just haven't I'm confused on what to download for what. So like the cursor and then if I need to do another fast API like to get everything running. So that'd be pretty much all my update. I haven't got it like running, but I have it all cloned in all four of the repositories.
Solid.
Yeah. uh Pass it over to Ron. But yeah, I'll stay on after just to get a step by step from you to
Gotcha.
get everything running on my end or yeah, locally on my end.
No updates on this side. Yeah, I cloned it as well. I did the most recent pulls. It's just I haven't had a chance to go through them. But that Docker thing was. Did we go over that in class? Why does it sound so familiar?
I might
Like,
have
was there a
mentioned.
point where some of us, yeah, like some of us couldn't open the stuff, and then we had to do it like virtually or something like that?
We definitely didn't go through it in detail, but I definitely think I might have mentioned it a few times through class because Docker is something that isn't. It's not new to me. I've used it before, but I've never built an actual project with it. So that was like my first actual project I did with it. Yeah, I
And
made.
then could we also use that for, sorry, for like to run the front end and the back end for the ones we're working on? Yeah, right.
No, I don't have. So you have to. So you can only use Docker for projects that are set up to use Docker. And so those Hava GPT and the
Okay.
airport, I haven't set up Docker with those things. I only did it for that one because I was just messing with it. But yeah, and I think that would be. I think that's maybe another thing that I want to do down the line, or maybe one of you guys can help me out with that. Is setting it up with Docker. But at the moment, no, you can't. We cannot do that with that one. Yeah.
And then your build plan, that was pretty sick. Like, how long did it take for you to like map that out?
Yeah, no, so I used AI to help me with that. And actually here, I'll share, let me share this. Where did it go? Where did it go? So I had a huge conversation with AI where I kind of, and so actually I think this is a good thing to share because this is how I usually do projects. Like once I get talking with a potential client or whatever, this is what I'll usually do in here. Let me find the chat. Let me see, where is it? Sorry, my computer's slow. I'm trying to find the thing. Um, 4, 3. Dang, my computer. Sorry, guys. I have a lot of stuff running on my computer. Here we go. This is it. Almost there. Okay, yeah, here I just found it. Okay, so my computer's, hold up, it's like frozen for me. Okay, it's still frozen for me. All right, guys, my computer is a little bit slow today.
Bro, you got like a million tabs open.
Oh, I do. Wait, what do you guys see the cornerstone?
It's on the build plan.
Okay, good. Yeah, no, I have a million tabs open. I think I do. Trust, it's actually kind of crazy. I think I have at least four different like profile Google profile accounts, and then each one of them probably have a good like 20 to 50 tabs in each of them. I don't know. It's really bad. I need to figure out a better flow with that. But anyway, I actually just went through this with the actualized class today because I wanted to share with them because they're just starting capstones. And so like this is like how I like to think through like working on new projects. And so this is actually I think something that I've wanted to go through you guys and I forgot. And I actually noted this. I want to add this to the curriculum somehow or some go through this with the class that like as we're teaching. But anyway, so here was my first message. This is the first message where I kind of had an idea of what I wanted to do, but I'm trying to plan it. And so it says, okay, cool. So I want to think through this because literally, like, before I build anything, I want to plan first. I need a plan of what I need to do. Right. So like kind of when we're doing our capstones, what I told you guys was the better the plan that you create, the easier it's going to be for you to build it. Right. So in that sense, the better plan I can make, like for example, this build plan, the easier it is for me to kind of implement it. Right. And so with that being said, is okay, cool. I want to think through this and plan this out. Basically, I have a client. Their name is Cornerstone Accounting and Business Services. They do payroll, blah, blah, blah. And they need two things from us right now mainly. They need a website for their business to help, or they need a website for their business, and then they need help automating and or digitizing some of their workflows. The website is pretty straightforward. It should do blah blah blah, and then the workflows that they need to automate are these. So it was that client intake form that I just showed you guys filling out, and then from there, the other thing was this. Wait, what else is here? Yeah, I wanted to do like a customer service chatbot, kind of similar to what Lana's doing actually for us for the Code School of Guam. And then the other thing I wanted to do was also potentially automate the process of creating transmittals. And I gave it that invoice maker example that I kind of shared. Well, what do you think of it? And it's like, okay, cool. Hey, I think that's a great idea, blah, blah, blah. You know, here's the recommended architecture. And here's some thoughts, blah, 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 some stuff to kind of go through. And so I read through this. And then I was like, I answered some of its questions. I was like, you know, I think that's a pretty solid plan. Here's some of my thoughts, though. And I gave it kind of the response to some of its questions it had. And I was like, what are your thoughts on this tech stack? What are your thoughts on the tech stack, structure of code base, schema, etc.? And I gave it some context. I'm most familiar with Ruby on Rails in API mode, React.js for front end, Python and Fast API for APIs, but specifically for the apps where I've generated or where I've integrated AI, or I've used, I'm sorry, I use Fast API for API specifically where I've used AI in it, React Native for mobile, and then I've used some other language and frameworks. And then I even shared with it like what services I usually use for cloud stuff. So for example, for the DB, I've been using Postgres with Neon. For hosting, I've been using Netlify and Render. For authentication, I was rolling my own auth, but lately I've been using Clerk, which is what I was doing for the projects that you guys are working on. Resend for emails, click send for text messages. Those are some of the stuff I've been using lately, but I'm open to using other things. What are your thoughts? And so then it came back and it said, those are great answers. Here's your updated tech stack recommendation, blah, blah, blah. Private S3 uploads, because I noted that I haven't done private S3 uploads, but it's kind of walking me through what to think about for it and how it would roughly work. And then here's where it helped me to start thinking about the actual code base structure and then blah blah blah, database tables, etc. Went through all this kind of stuff, and then where's the next one? Yeah, went through all this, And so, okay, cool. Then it did some other stuff. And then it wanted me to use Rails though. It wanted me to only use Rails. That's where kind of like I'm pushing back a little bit. I'm like, hey, I'm not opposed to using Rails. I actually love it. I kind of get probably gave it a little bit too much context. I was like, it's my first framework and blah blah blah. But I've been using Fast API a lot lately, and it's probably my second favorite thing. Whatever. But the reason I bring this up is for the transmittal maker. I'm thinking of it more likely to use a Fast API backend for the because of the AI integration. Because that's how I did it for the invoice maker. It's a React.js front end, Fast API backend. I don't want to use Next.js for the AEI stuff. I don't really like using when I messed with it before. I didn't like it as much as I did with Python. And so, does this change anything regarding your recommendation for the infrastructure? And then I answered some of its other questions. And then from there, that's where finally we came up with this architecture, right? So this is where finally like it's getting into what you guys saw there. Where okay, cool. This is going to be a React with a Rails API, Fast API, and a Postgres database. And this is where I was like, I was reading through all this and I was like, man, that's so interesting. And I was like, I even told it, you'll guys see it in just a second. I was like, I've never done that before. So I said, this architecture is actually really interesting. I've never done anything where there's two different APIs using the same DB and stuff. How would that work? And then I answered some other questions. And so here's where it started kind of explaining it to me. How two APIs share one database. Rails API, Fast API, same connection from Neon using the same Postgres database. Blah, blah, blah. And then it's talking about here's the key concepts. Rails owns the schema and it manages the migrations. Fast API mirrors the schema and it only reads the definitions. It doesn't, Fast API is never going to mess with the data, with like the structure of the database. But both can read and write freely. Both can create data and read data. So Rails is going to, for example, create a client. Fast API is going to create a transmittal. They're two different things. Rails will never touch the transmittals. Fast API will, but they can still both create them, create different parts of it. And that keeping them separate in that sense, but together still able to read the same things and create things in the same database is kind of what is the key thing there. And says why it works well, blah, 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 blah. Here it is. We kind of read through all that. And then from there, here's where I was like, okay, cool. Wow, I really like all this stuff. I want to create a PRD with everything that we didn't need to know, blah, blah, blah. And then that's where it started creating the PRD. This wasn't the final thing with it. After this, I proofread it and I actually made some updates. I told it like, hey, no, here I actually there's some updates that we need to do, blah, blah, blah. But this was my rough flow with how I planned this out, right? So I started with an idea and I just brain dumped everything it is that I had that was going on in my head with what I needed to get done. And then I was like, what is the best way to do it? And we started talking through it together. I was like, no, I don't think I really want to do it that way. I want to use this instead. All right, cool. So then we started structuring the plan that way. And then once I was finally happy and I had a decent plan, that's when I told it, hey, let's create a PRD. So PRD stands for Product Requirement Document. And that's a very popular thing that larger software, like software businesses do, is they create a product requirements document. So that way they can track what it is they need to know for this product, what they need to do, and anything regarding that stuff. And so that's exactly what I did. And so this is the PRD right here. And it starts at the top. And I even shared it with like some principles that I want to follow. So that way the AI always knows, right? So sorry, dang, my thing's frozen again, but I gave it some guiding principles like mobile first. Always, whenever I'm building a project, I always want it to be mobile first. So that way it will always look properly on a mobile device. Because more than likely people are going to be using it on their phone. The other thing I always really recommend, I always try to do is ease of use. Like the easier it is for your application to use, right? The more convenient it is for a user to use your application, the more they're going to use it, the better for whatever business it is. And then the other thing that I really emphasized to it was do it right, not quick. So I don't want to do a band-aid fix where it's just going to be a quick fix and then it might break in the future. I want to do it right now so that way in the future I don't have to worry about it, right? So I'm always thinking of the long run. There's some situations where I might need a quick fix, but for the most part, these three things right here are like the other things that I really emphasize to it. And so all these different things that I'm kind of talking to you guys about is all a part of this product requirements document. And so this is kind of my flow before I even start building anything. This is what I do almost every single time lately. Sorry, a lot of talking again. Questions, comments on this, guys? All right, cool. Sorry. Just wanted.
That's super cool.
Yeah, yeah. So this has been my flow for building software lately.
That's super detailed.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just to a certain extent, there's definitely a that's why even for like Hoffa GPT and the tournament, there's one thing that I'm trying to find the balance of is too much documentation. So for like Hoffa GPT, for example, you guys will notice when you guys clone it, there's literally, where is it at? Not in the front end, right here. There's literally this documentation folder that has like so much documentation, right? How did I crawl all the websites, right? How did I crawl all the different like the resources online to get all the data in there? How does deployment work? Because deployment in this application is different. We use something called Gunicorn instead of Uvicorn, right? How file uploads work, all this stuff. And so there's definitely like there's a balance, and that's why I wanted to simplify the readmes, is because I feel like they were kind of overloaded with data. Whereas like these readmes, I feel like it's like you just need the data that's important. And so I'm trying to find the balance between doing too much documentation that's like it just gets overwhelming and you end up not using it to find just the right amount. And so that's what kind of what I've been working on. But yeah, I like being detailed with these things because to me it's like the better you can plan it out, the better you're gonna, the easier it is gonna be for you and everyone working with you. Yeah, man. Okay. Um, that's sorry. I could definitely keep talking, but that's all the main stuff I had. The only other thing that I wanted to go through before letting you guys go is just I was just going to show you guys what it looks like to get both of these applications started. And then after that, that's really all I had. But if any, does anyone need to go so far? I'll probably try to take like 5 minutes or less. All right, cool. All right, so we're gonna start. We'll do this. We'll do the what's it called? Airport tournament first. And so for the airport tournament, so to answer your question, Kiko, because you were asking a little bit about it. So the airport tournament has a front end and a back end. The front end is going to be the GIAA tournament front end, and the back end is going to be the GIAA tournament API. And so you'll see in Slack, when you go to Slack, you'll see here's the repos. So for the front end and for the back end, for the airport golf registration, you'll see there's the front end, there's the back end. I would recommend what I've been doing. And so I'll show you guys this. So all of the different projects that I've been messing around with. Shoot, where's my like expo finder? So here's what my for like Shimizu technology, all the different projects I've been messing around with between like last year and a little bit this year. And so for every project, like I recommend grouping the front end and back end together under one folder so that way it's easy to find. So for example, for the GIA tournament, this has both
Man,
the front
I
end.
kind of did that and I ended up deleting it because I thought it was a bad thing to do.
Oh no, no, no. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not I was so during the class, I didn't recommend you guys to do this because this gets really busy really fast. There's this tournament actually is not that big. This one probably there's like 100 files in here. And so, but 100 files for a student who has been dealing with like five, that's a lot, right? And so I didn't want you guys to get overwhelmed. I wanted VS Code to only have the stuff that you guys needed. That's the reason why during the class, I highly recommended that you guys opened up each project in its own VS Code window. However, I personally, in my regular workflow, I don't like having them in separate things because if I'm talking to AI about it, I want it to have access to both of these, right? So if I tell me about this application, it's not only going to be able to tell me about the front end or not only going to be able to tell me about the back end, it should be able to tell me about both because it has access to both. And also for me, it's easier for me to track as I'm doing more and more projects. But then the other just thing I was going to note here was just in general, like for all of the different projects that have a front end and a back end that are separate, I would recommend grouping them under one thing, under one folder. So for example, Invoice Maker with a front end and a back end, both the front end and back end are in this same folder to track them. And same with this tournament with Hoffa GPT, right? Both the front end and back end, even though they're separate repos, they're still in this same folder. So that way I know exactly where I don't need to look through here and find two different Hoffa GPT stuff. They're both under Hoffa GPT, and it's right there. All right. But yeah. So anyway, so those are the two things, and you can see them in Slack. There's the front end and back end. Once you clone them, Then you can come here to the readmes. And I did my best to make the readmes as straightforward as possible. And so there's some different things with the way that these applications are set up. The main difference that you guys are going to see for the golf tournament, so this uses Rails in the backend, so Rails API, and then it uses React in the front end. So of course you can CD into it, do the npm install, and so this, what's it called? You need to get the env for both of these, the environment file with the environment variables, and so I shared both of those here. So we can see for the tournament front end, here's the environment variables that you need. For the golf tournament backend, here's environment variables. For Office GPT, there's a lot more because there's a lot more stuff that we're doing. But so for that, you're going to go and you could use this command. What this command is going to do is it's going to go and it's going to create a .env file in the front end or in the back end, depending on which one you're working on. So for example, this one's for the front end. There's the values. If I go to the back end one, right here, here's the back end, and here's the values for that, right? And so that's the next thing you need to do is you need to get your env file. You need to get the env variables, which again are in Slack, and you need to put them in an env. From there, you can set up the database, start it up. And then for the front end, kind of similar thing, npm install, get the env, npm run dev. However, the difference here between what we're used to is that we're not rolling our own auth. And what I mean by rolling our own auth is we're not the ones that are taking care of the JWT, taking care of dealing with authentication and creating a sign up page, a login page. We're not the ones doing that. So we're using something called Clerk. So Clerk is the one that handles authentication for us. So with that being said, Clerk is a cloud service. So technically you could not do this locally. Like you couldn't, like logging in and signing up wouldn't work if you didn't have internet. You have to be connected to the internet. And so Clerk, if I pull up, where's my thing? Shucks, I have so many browser windows, it's crazy. Here we go. And so the weird thing that you need to understand with the golf tournament stuff here, sorry, do this, is that I'm going to go to Clerk. And so all of us are going to be using the same authentication database. So for example, if you were to create a user in the golf tournament, I'm going to see that user. If you were to create a registered golfer, I'm not going to see that because that's on your database locally. I wouldn't see that. However, if you guys were to create a user, because that deals with the authentication process, I would see that. So for example, I'm going to go to the golf tournament, and if I go to the development one, here's all of the users who are in our development environment. So as soon as you guys create a user, you guys create your own user here, I'm going to see your name. I will see it. And if I created a new user, you guys will see it because everybody's going to have access to the same Clerk because we're using an API key for this, and I'm not going to create a new API key for every one of us. So we're all technically using the same authentication account, which is a little bit weird. It kind of threw me off when I was setting this up because I didn't think it fully through. And so that's the weird thing to kind of understand with the golf tournament. Everything's the same as our Rails and React applications, except for Clerk. Clerk is going to be weird because for authentication, again, it's using a cloud service. And so everyone's users are all going to be in here. Right? Does that make sense with everybody? Okay. And I did add some explanation to here with, okay, what's shared versus what's local, for example. So we can see here, what is shared versus what's local. Your database handles local, Clerk just handles password verification, decrypt, that kind of stuff. And I kind of explain how it works, right? So, but everything else is exactly the same. So for example, I'm going to start up the terminal. And so I'm going to open up two terminal windows because this is not using Docker, so I can't use one. I'm going to go ls, and I need to cd into the front end first. npm run dev, perfect, it's running there. I go to this one, ls, cd to the back end. And then from there, Rails S. Perfect. Now I can go to the browser, and now I can go to localhost 5173. And here's the airport. Now this is running, right? That's what there is to it. But yeah, so I just needed to share that with you guys because for authentication specifically, it is different. There isn't a lot dealing with authentication here. It's like the staff portal. And so this is where we can see this is done by clerk. This is not done by us. We don't like if you look for the code for this sign up thing, you're not going to see anything because it's not there. This is on clerk. Um, okay, cool. Sorry. And to quickly go through it, so that's with the golf tournament. Questions about the golf tournament before I move on to Hoffa GPT? Okay, cool. Hoffa GPT now. Hoffa GPT is going to be even a little bit more different than what we're used to. Again, the README for the front end and back end, I'm not going to go through it right now, but we can see it's same process for the most part. You're going to clone it, npm install, get the env, npm run dev. Back end, same thing. Quick start. You guys are this one's UV, so you're going to clone it. You're going to run UV sync to install the dependencies, get your env, and then you're going to run it with this specific command: UV run, uvicorn, blah blah blah. So the difference here with Hoffa GPT is not only is it using Clerk, I'm sorry, I know I keep doing that, but not only is it using Clerk for the authentication, it's also using Neon, which is similar to like the render database. It's using Neon for the actual database as well, both locally, both like for when you're running it locally and when you're using it in production, right? So Hoffa GPT, here's Hoffa GPT, and then if I go to branches right here, so we're using this branch right here, dev clone of prod. So it's going to look almost exactly like the production one, but it's a clone of it that's going to have some changes, a little bit of changes. But that's the thing to understand here is that everybody is using the same database and same authentication. So if you guys are running this application locally, which I'll do it right now. So let me grab this command. ls cd Hoffa GPT API, run that, and then ls cd Hoffa GPT front end npm run dev. Okay, so when I'm running this locally, okay, good, I didn't break anything. If I am going to sign in, blah, blah, blah. So this is using Clerk. Again, everybody's going to have the same exact accounts here. Okay, cool. So if I was to do something in here, anything, it doesn't matter what I do. Like if I make a chat, I'm just going to say test, click send. This message test gets saved into the database. So we go tables, conversations. Let me refresh. Whatever. Anyway, it's going to be here in a second. But anyway, it's going to say test here because I sent this message. This message that I sent is going to be in you guys' database too, not only in mine locally, because again, we're all using the same database. This Hoffa GPT is not running on like the Postgres on your app on your device. It's running on Postgres on Neon, right? So that's the difference here. So just to kind of recap, the two main differences that we have for the golf tournament, authentication is the one that's going to be a cloud service using Clerk. For Hoffa GPT, the database and authentication are running on Clerk or on the cloud. And those are kind of the two things that I really wanted to go through, guys, just to show you guys that that's what's going to be different. Sorry, went a little over 5 minutes, I know, but wanted to make sure you guys understood that. Does that make sense, guys? All right, cool. You guys have any questions before I wrap up now? Solid. Okay, cool. Well, that is all I have. I was talking to Lana already a bit like right before the meeting actually. I started creating a list of tickets that you guys could work on. And so on Thursday, after we do our final updates for this sprint, I'm gonna share between Lana and I, we'll share with you guys some tickets that you guys could work on. And then that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna plan what it is that you guys are gonna be working on for the next sprint. Right. So let's say you have one or two tickets, those are gonna be your two tickets for the next sprint where it's your job to get that stuff done. Right. And so just a heads up on that. That's what we'll be doing next week or this next on Thursday. But yeah, okay, cool. Now that is really all I have, guys. Thank you guys so much for being here. And yeah, I guess I will see you guys on Thursday. And thank you guys for listening to my rant.
And very
Yo, show
informative, Brad.
solid,
It's okay.
bro. Super
Yeah.
detailed, informative.
Trying,
Thank
Yeah.
you.
trying. Yeah, yeah,
We
anytime.
appreciate so weird.
I got you guys.
Sorry, guys. Yeah. I'll see you guys Thursday. Shoot. Be safe.
Yep, see you Thursday.
All right.
Sure, guys, take it easy.
Yeah.
All right.